Unlock your potential with a comprehensive suite of investing tools and expert education with GammaEdge. Start your free 14-day trial today.
When people buy options, dealers have to hedge those options. Hedging options is basically selling underlying or buying underlying, some fashion of that. And the reason why I like TDZ so much is because it helps me keep track imbalance of hedging inventories. So what does it mean to be at a true delta's center as is zero? To me, that means that the shares that dealers have had to transact, buy, sell, let's just say sell for puts, is equivalent across all expiries, just a very encapsulated view of the whole complex versus or it's when it becomes equivalent with call shares that have been purchased, let's say for hedging needs. And so why is that important? It's important because delta equals money. Delta is the belief that people are willing to pay money for a move to happen. And so I want to keep track of that. I want to keep track of where is that balance point? How far off of the balance point are we? Meaning how much are people in profit? And I think that that's a good way to capture that. And that's why I really like True Delta Zero, because it just kind of keeps me aware at a very, very high level encapsulated viewpoint of the moneyness of the complex and the balance of that between puts and calls across all expirations, strikes, you name it. It's a very aggregate view, and that's why I like now for TGZ, that is more at what point is dealers on an aggregate, a collective perspective? When are they hedging calls more aggressive? That's how I view Gamma. It's, oh my God, my deltas are changing extremely fast and I have to get ready or hedge this now. And so TGZ tells me encapsulating expiration, strikes, you name it. At what point do dealers have to start caring more about one instrument type versus another? And then when you think about what goes into the hedging mechanisms of that, such as buying shares for people going long calls, it really just gives you a sense of where can the complex start to really flip and dealers start to focus on more instruments. And not only that, but as we do things like cross a zero, what does that mean? That means that you're at a point where the gamma exposure is balanced. And if you're going to start moving away from a zero, that means that, let's say we cross up above a zero, a true gamma zero. To me, that means, wow, we're going up. And as we go up, the call gamma of the whole entire complex is going to just keep growing and growing and growing until we hit the next Gex plus. And so to me, that's just a really powerful thing, especially when you couple it with things like the P-trans level, because the whole essence of it is gamma growing, or the gamma is starting to get neutralized, at the center. That's why I don't like to get really directional at the centers too much, because it can chop sometimes, but sometimes you just blast off in one direction from it, and the gamma's got to grow systemically on an aggregate level across all dealers. And so that means that the hedgingness, the aggressiveness of managing deltas just becomes more and more important. So it's just a way to keep track of the whole damn thing over, multiple expiries, keeping up with inventories. Where is the imbalance? How far are we away from that imbalance point or the balance point? And then you can look at things like the zero historic graphs and look at the the historical change of those levels.
I've got it up for you right now. I've got SPY. I got 180 days of the SPY history for it up on the screen right now if you're able to see it.
Yeah, and so I really like using those because, again, delta is people spending money on the belief that they will that the stock will move. Let's say they're long, and that needs to move by at least what they pay. So they're paying for a belief in the future expected termination value, assuming the option expires in the money. That's literally the definition of delta. And so that is all intertangled with, dealers have to, sell shares. They have to buy shares. They have to hedge things. And I want to keep track of those inventories and know where, as Doc likes to say, one side of the boat's more loaded than the other. But, is it the only tool in my arsenal? Hell no. Wing charts, I need those to get the strike by strike details. We need things like the centroids. We need Gex ratio. We need, it's one tool in the tool chest, I love it so much because I think it's extremely powerful and keeps me well grounded and keeps me from being a monkey because I like to be a monkey too often.
So isn't this a true zero kind of makes a little bit more sense on a longer term perspective? Because if you start thinking of a shorter term, like a 1DD, 0, 2, 3DDs, then the hedging that the dealer does is done mostly on a real-time basis as more calls and put positions are opened or closed. They have to hedge and re-hedge themselves. So the true zeros would, if you have to look at this metric, you have to rely on a little longer term perspective, isn't it?
Depends upon your window of analysis. So when you normally run the true zero command, it's running over the entire complex, but you can isolate certain windows of time, for instance, out from now out into the next 2 weeks. And you can kind of look at, hey, considering just the next 2 weeks, where is the balance of inventories of calls versus puts? And where are we in relation to that with spot price? And you can come up with, that's the great thing about it is you can isolate, you encapsulate a lot of information about different expiries all at one time in one figure of merit or two, true gamma zero, true delta zero. So you just have to spend time with it. It's just a little bit easier for me because I've been doing it for a while and it's just become second nature. So.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, I hope that was a satisfactory answer on the zeros.
That was wonderful. Yeah, that was wonderful.
Okay, cool.
Now go back to your ball game if you don't want to listen in, and we'll back in you. We'll sum you from the ball game if another question that is being hit right across your home plate sweet spot. We'll let you know.
Sounds good. I'll get the notification. I promise.
Thanks, Panther.
Yep. You.
That's why this stuff is so.
So is it fair to say, okay, I'm looking at that SPY zero chart now. So we got price moving higher. So is it fair to say we want to see the zeros move higher with price, which would that be indicating that more deltas are being added?
Yes.
And then their dealers are having to chase their deltas, hedging that, whatnot?
Yeah, I think that's a correct way of. I think that's the slope of the lines.
Yeah.
For me, it's the slope
exactly.
of the line that means the most, right? So,
correct.
I tend not to look at necessarily the relationship above or below, but I do pay attention to it. But for me, for instance, when we start seeing upward slope in both the green line is the gamma zero and the red line is the delta zero. So when we start seeing both of those moving up, we're in that expansive price expansion type environment until we're not. Right? Until we see we get that reversal and then we start pulling back and the calculation, what you're seeing here on the screen for the history is done at the end of the day for the database, but you can run it, literally anytime you want and it's done in real time. It takes a little bit because it uses a lot of mice food up in the Amazon cloud, but it gives you kind of a view. So, speaking for Panther, now that he's watching his ball game, he's perfected in his way of looking at things. I think how we are moving in relation to it. And what I would take away is we're starting, when you look at the history like this, we're starting to come back in balance, right? The market literally I just chastise mathematical constructs. This is purely a mathematical construct. Nobody else has this. But it basically does say where, if I were sitting at, I don't know, some broker dealer, whoever, and I was looking at how much is my actual inventory and how much am I exposed, as we get closer and closer to these lines, my inventory net inventory is flat. Right. And we're in that zone right now. So for me, it's basically telling me that the market has reset with the latest data, today, the 11th of October, we're kind of at this neutral point, and we can go either direction. We can start doing this kind of business here. We can start an uptrend, or, we could start another downtrend. Who knows? I mean, it's not predictive. None of this is predictive, but it's telling us that the rubber band isn't snatched, too far, right? Stretched too far. And now that we're starting to reverse and see a positive slope here, and that's telling me, well, we should be going, thinking about longer exposure until we don't. And that's how I use it, just to kind of guide where we should be looking.
Cool, yeah. I was trying to distill it down to like the simplest way, because
Yeah,
I'm almost thinking like in a way I think it kind of mirrors a longer term tick kind of well.
It
Longer
does.
term tick is starting to flatten out. This is flattening out, so yeah.
Yeah, the beauty of this is there's no moving averages here, right? Where the longer term tick clearly has got, constructed with moving averages. This doesn't have, so you don't get any of that, that delay. Here are the cues, right? And the cues are telling us kind of that same story. We're starting the slopes are starting to turn up. Price is starting to react accordingly.